Now, in part because we are recording, I have avoided using my stepdaughter's name just to respect their online privacy. And of note, so last week, and that was National Autism Awareness Day. Canada's Autism Awareness Month is in October. Honestly, that confuses me, but any month can be Autism Awareness Month. So let's go right on ahead. I looked up. There was a girl trying to do the monkey bars and failing over and over and over again, but they never stopped trying. That was the day I met my stepdaughter, and the day I knew I wanted to be in their life, and also knew I wanted to be their stepmother. No, I didn't know a thing about parenting, but I did know a thing or two about mental health and being different. When I met her, I didn't even know that I was autistic, but I recognized parts of me in her. I recognized the anxiety, the worry, the stress, and I just wanted to help them out. The bond we formed is one of the strongest bonds I have ever formed. By week 3, I was ready to jump in front of traffic to protect them. Now, I am 24 years old. Being a teen and a child feels like yesterday. When I was 11, I was playing Canon in D at my piano recital. And now I will be going to their piano recital in a few weeks. The passage of time, it's something that I'm starting to barely recognize. It's just disappearing into the void. I've heard it starts going even faster soon. I used to come here most Sundays as a kid, but now instead of being that child, I'm up here crafting the stories to tell. I both remember the drives of wanting to run away and the process of helping my stepdaughter not to, and to instead find their calm. I recognize that most people here are grandparents or have been parenting for much longer than I have. But today, I wanted to shed light on both what it's like to be a neurodivergent child and a caregiver as well. Now, with both of these perspectives, I hope I can share with you some tools on how to better interact with neurodivergent kids and teens, how to connect. Being a kid or teen on the spectrum, or even more difficult on the spectrum with ADHD, my kid, is difficult to say the least. Your brain works differently, and you know that you are weird. Kids are not kind. They point it out. You understand that you're different, but you don't fully understand how or why. At least not with a diagnosis, but still even then it's confusing. You look around you and you wonder why other kids your own age seem to be able to get themselves together and wonder why it's so hard for you. You find the world so overstimulating and overwhelming because unlike your peers, you get really over-focused and hyper-focused on one thing at a time, going back and forth between things, and your mind is just chaotic. And then society just expects you to shift focus when they want you to. And that's really difficult. And I've learned looking at my stepdaughter that social media has just made this so much worse. She sees kids her own age cleaning up their rooms so easily, and she wonders, why can't I do this? Why is cleaning my room, putting my pencils in that box, something that takes me a whole day to do? And that is something called executive dysfunction. and it's extremely difficult. But it's when you can't compare yourself to your peers and you feel like you're so behind, it's so difficult. And you look also at your parents and you wonder how they seem to have everything together. How you could ever come so close to achieving any similar goals. And then as a parent, you're struggling too. You don't fully understand what's going on, and you're trying to keep yourself together for your family and your kids. You don't want to upset them. These two perspectives collide, creating a reality that really works for no one. A culture built for hardly anyone to thrive, and mostly for people just to survive. Everyone feeling the crippling need to succeed without understanding that success is never around the corner. If the goalpost is constantly changing, we are both conditioned, and within this mentality, we are born to fail. Again, I can't speak to everyone's experience, but from what I know and see and hear in life, this consistency of these problems seems real, seems like a reality we must all face. As we struggle just to get by, as we expect ourselves to be better and do better, when in fact we forget that we are enough just as we are. You are enough as you are. And yet, we must always try harder. This is one of the dichotomies of DBT, and it's difficult. We live in a society of self-esteem, focusing on self-judgment and not self-compassion. The compassion we all need to feel safe, secure, and loved. We must know how to suffer with ourselves for growth. I've seen it in my partner, myself, and my parents. That look of, I'm not enough. I couldn't give my child what they needed. They're struggling, and I'm powerless. I just feel so powerless. I've yelled, I've caused a rift. Am I deserving of love? Am I deserving of forgiveness? I've started to realize that as a parent, you kind of have to know and realize that when your kid's older, you should expect counseling, because there's no way to get through parenting without causing rifts and problems along the way. It's just literally impossible. We try our best, but this is not a game at which any of us can perfectly succeed. But if you're trying your best to be supportive and working on yourself while communicating with them, it will be better in the future. Hopefully they'll be able to see and appreciate you in their 20s, like I've slowly been able to appreciate my own parents. As long as we're working to be better and commit to the small changes, that is what will make the difference. With autism, there comes yet another layer. Some people don't think that autistic people experience emotions, but in fact, those emotions are either just at 0 or 100. That gray area that's barely existing. And that can be really stressful for an outsider, because gauging how someone else is doing when they're either blasé and muted or hyperactive is challenging. When you're autistic, the need to feel seen, fit in, is very intense. It can be beyond frustrating to try to explain how you in your experience, especially to adults, specifically adults who are not autistic like yourself. Because often their responses to the situation can seem really disconnected to you. Your mind has trained itself to mirror others, and when someone asks you how you're doing, you feel like your head is about to explode. with emotions, that's the last thing you want to be asked. You're hoping that someone will see that you're struggling and say, "Hey, I'm here for you. How can I help?" Even if that response, you might burst into tears or yell, those are the emotions that you really need to release in that moment, that feel trapped inside of you in a way that no one ever told you emotions would get. And sometimes it's also that space and that need for someone just to sit next to you and allow you to go through that, because these emotions, yet again, it's either 100 or 0, and it's so challenging. Autistic people are also prone to masking, which will only intensify their emotions under that mask of calm. That sense of being lost within your own mind and within your society at large feels so isolating, and you just want someone to see you because you feel invisible. Now, as a parent, it might look like your child is excelling, that they are making new friends, being more engaged. Maybe they're a bit shy, but hey, they're getting into society like you always hoped. So you'll fall into the trap of saying, "Hey, you're doing such a great job, keep it up," which in fact is the opposite, when the fact is the opposite of what's happening. Your kid's just hoping to God maybe someone will see them. Please, someone just see me. And you know, for the most part, parents just end up feeling overwhelmed. We get so caught up in trying to help our kids, who we may or may not be able to understand, and sometimes neither party can really hear each other. And we can't hear each other out. We talk and talk and talk, but in fact, no one is actually listening, because we're all so scared. We're all so angry. We're all in a society that for years has talked about independence and individuals conquering their issues, when in fact the idea that anyone should have to face the mountain of parenting alone is astonishing, short-sighted, and disconnected from the fact it does in fact take a village to raise a child. It shouldn't just be you, and even just you and your partner, you need more of a community. When fewer and fewer people have the family and community they need to help with parenting, it falls apart so fast. And everyone is holding onto the edge of a cliff for dear life, suffering alone together. This past week, on Tuesday, I had the opportunity to listen to an all-candidates debate here on disability. I heard a lot of what I expected to hear, but then I met other people on there and found some parents like me. People like me struggling to both support themselves and their kids, looking for community and support in the world where, because of their child's autism, they'd been kicked out of so many places, where people weren't willing to look beyond the external signs of overstimulation and see their child and themselves. As we chatted, we started talking about, why aren't we empowering each other? And why can't we lead the supports we need for each other and use all of our strengths to make up for each other's challenges? The truth is, in the end, we are both parents and children, and we need our own help to parent and care for ourselves, too. We can never truly give our best selves when we can't unlock that power towards ourselves. We're struggling, we're feeling overwhelmed, and parenting is hard. No one taught us how to truly be an adaptable parent. We were always looking one generation back and hoping to dear God that we don't make the same mistakes and we live up to the impossibly high standards of being the perfect parent. There is no one playbook for parenting because kids are people who respond differently to different parenting styles. And in general, autistic people need more time and calm. The impossible task is to translate our love into action, to be open to receiving whatever comes back, the good, the bad, and the ugly. To parent, to be there for another, you have to be willing to get up every day and try again. You have to be willing to learn and adapt as situations change faster than you ever dreamed was possible. You have to hold forgiveness in your heart towards yourself. When you make mistakes and realize that even when we try our best isn't always what others need. Sometimes they need us to reset and hear. They need us to recognize that they are suffering and know that we understand what that suffering is. To have compassion is to suffer with. So whether it's extending self-compassion or compassion to your kid or compassion to another person, sometimes the strongest thing we can do is just to be present and quiet. And present even if we have a million questions of our own. If we can just wait a moment for calm and say back what we've heard and ask, do I understand this? Then we can try to read the emotions behind the actions. And we can see and address the fear, the anxiety, the frustration behind a meltdown. We might be able to slowly open those lines back up for communication. My stepdaughter and I, we connected very strongly over our autistic tendencies, walking in circles, getting overwhelmed by emotions, and I've had to realize that that though we are very similar in some ways, that we are also very different. In some ways, I look at my stepdaughter and long to have been as outgoing and knowledgeable as she is. I long to have been as wise as she is, but I also know that in her own wisdom, that knowledge is a double-edged sword. And sometimes the more you understand about your situation, the more you learn about how much you can't do yet, the harder it is as a child because there is so little you can do. And learning the skills of mindfulness, self-compassion, and these things, well, we're adults and we're still trying our best, and it's so much harder when you're a kid and when your hormones are starting to kick in. The world is big and you feel powerless, especially when your parents are feeling powerless too, because the system doesn't offer the supports they need, and those supports have been taken away by certain governments year over year over year. In the end, we just want to feel heard and seen. But to truly be able to hear and see another, we have to make sure we're hearing ourselves, our fears, our anxieties, and our biases clearly. None of us are perfect. We're all just trying our best not to repeat our past, swinging from pendulum to pendulum side. No one goes into parenting knowing what they're doing. We're all blind, but we learn to see with time. As long as we're open to knowledge and learning from each other, it's never too late. We need to be willing to build up our communities and open up about the suffering we're all facing. Parenting is not easy, but when parenthood hits you, there's a switch that turns on, and that switch will never turn off. You leave a changed person, and we're all afraid of making mistakes, the mistakes of our parents, afraid of repeating our past. But as our own people, we are entitled to make our own mistakes, and we must listen, wait, learn, and grow, because parenting is a spectrum, and you will always be learning where you are on it. Now, the day before I started volunteering at Art City, the day before I started the actions that would lead towards me meeting my fiance, I wrote the following journal entry. Dear future me, tell me if I'm right or wrong about being married to my wife. Actually document reality. Am I with the woman of my dreams? How did we meet? Have we adopted children, or are we just hanging tight with the cats? I hope that happiness doesn't shock you now like it shocks me. And I hope that you can express yourself without feeling insecure. I hope that survival mode is off, and I hope that it doesn't bother you anymore. I hope that you love in the way that I wish I could. I guess I'll know when I'm you. And I know one day it'll feel like you are right around the corner, waiting for me to wake up and realize the deepest truth is love no matter where. I love you. Our closing hymn is number 1009, When Your Heart is in a Holy Place.